Yeah, yeah.
It's almost as if right now politics has become a
Mm-hmm.
gigantic exercise in brand and marketing on all sides.
Mm-hmm.
Between the blue dog Democrats to the
Mm-hmm.
leftists to the people on the right. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like it's hard to even actually figure out what's going on because there's just so much noise,
Mm-hmm.
and people are trying to get their voice out when it comes to the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But almost never do people actually stop and study the policies and try to figure out how's this policy going to work and actually dig deep into that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, most people, right, exactly. Yeah, it's most of people.
But it's the
Yeah.
feeling, right? There's actually some studies on this that
Mm-hmm.
the feeling that you have your person in there is overrides everything else that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you think and believe
Mm-hmm.
because it's your guy.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Talking with Teachers. Once again, we have with us a very special guest. Today, that guest is Arbazz Mohammed. Arbazz is an award-winning marketer, philanthropist, and leadership expert. He's the president and co-founder of Sahaba Initiative, an award-winning nonprofit he co-founded at the age of 17 using social media to create opportunities for families impacted with poverty. He's also a United Nations Global Ambassador, host of the Bash Show, and head of digital marketing and online education. Arbazz has used social media to raise over $30 million and has managed over $10 million in advertising spent to grow organizations. Arbazz holds a master's degree in organizational leadership and is completing a doctorate in organizational change. Now, I've known Arbazz for a number of years. Some years ago, he invited me down to his Sahaba Initiative. Very young man. I really was very impressed with him. And, so he's continued his work, has political connections, and he has a very popular Instagram page, right? So please do welcome to the screen, Arbazz Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum wa
All right,
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
is everything.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
The bio's a little bit old. I've had a
Okay.
few events where people have read that bio. I'm like, man, that's some things have changed, but alhamdulillah.
Okay, what are we missing? What are we missing now? Yeah, what's
So I'm done with my doctorate.
okay.
Went back for another master's.
Mm-hmm.
Working at a different company, not at the education institute I was at before. Working for a tech
Mm-hmm.
company now. So,
Mm-hmm.
but lots of things come and go. So.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, I think that you were the first person to invite me to San Bernardino. That was the first time I ever heard of that particular city.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that there was an event that happened there some years later. And, of course, there's some suspicious sort of things surrounding that event. And, so when it happened, automatically, I remember I contacted you and asked you, are you guys okay down there? And so, yeah, but mashallah, it's great to have an opportunity to speak to you again.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the incident that put San Bernardino on the map. But San Bernardino has been a city that's very interesting because it has one of the highest poverty rates. But then alongside that, it's now the hub for Amazon and Tesla and many of these companies that sort of come into San Bernardino, and it's an interesting change to the city in a good way and a bad way. Some small businesses are hurt. A lot of small businesses are hurt, but then it's also created a lot of job opportunities, but it's now sort of becoming a hub because land is cheap here. You could buy land. There's an airport. There's 2 airports locally, so people are able to fly in and out. A lot of the employees that work in Tesla and Amazon, they fly in from San Francisco in the morning and then go back in the evening to back there.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that sort of just the story that we're hearing more and more about? Recently, I saw in the news that in Mexico, even that they're having a similar type of reaction to American digital workers moving or living in Mexico. Of course, take advantage of the lower costs of things, and doing their work and getting paid by the United States. So a lot of people are out in the streets. They're complaining about them in the same way that you hear people on the right complain about Mexicans, Hispanics invading United States, saying things like, well, they need to learn English, or they actually say they want to learn Spanish, right? So it's really amazing to see this, but it's like people get attracted to of course, cheap labor, right? Everyone wants to get rich, so we are always looking inside India, China, Mexico to get rich, and then to come back, well, to get the cheap labor, and then to come back and sell at the highest prices in places like Europe and the United States, and so of course Mexicans come here to make money, send it back home, right? And so it's really an interesting conundrum, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I would say that is a story of the world. It's very interesting, right? It's like at one level you could always advocate for the government to create some change, but at the same level you have to look in your own situation and see what you're doing with your own workers, with the own people around you, right? And there's lots of people that I've seen that own businesses, and they complain about X, Y, and Z, but then they don't treat their workers right. They don't pay their workers enough, and they try to do everything to cut every loophole as far as paying under the table and other things, and then not giving them workers' rights. So there's two parts to this. You'll see this in every part of the world where people are at one level looking to blame, but at the same time they don't want to take accountability in their own spaces. And
right. There's so many different levels of that. Even like you brought up Tesla just a little while ago, and so Tesla, Tesla, everybody wants to go green, so Tesla is good, it doesn't pollute the environment, but the cobalt mines, right, that you taking advantage of the poor people in the cobalt mines for the batteries, and then of course people, socialists, they want the government to provide for everything. But if you actually press those people, say, hey, well, you think that everyone should have all these things for free, but you don't want to come out of your own pocket, right? Right?
It's interesting. So I don't have a Tesla, but I have an ID4, a Volkswagen. It's electric, and I bought it 3 years ago when gas was really expensive in California. It was a good deal because I got I got the tax credit. I had free charging for 3 years. The car drives smooth. Everything is nice. But the charging is just like a nightmare, being able to charge your car. But I do use it to shame others that drive gas cars. That's my thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Let's talk a little bit more about you. I mean, it's a lot of
is the background noise coming? Should I close the window? Is that?
I don't hear anything. I'm
okay,
fine here. I don't hear anything. So,
okay.
Hopefully my sound is good too.
Yeah,
right?
you're good.
Yeah, okay, great. Alhamdulillah. Right. Yeah. So it's a little bit more about you. I mean, a lot of people, the audience, probably unfamiliar with you, and so I'm naturally trying to introduce to a different sort of audience, and you already have a large audience, much larger than my own, right? So really do appreciate you agreeing to this and to hopefully help and the effort itself, right? But what was it like growing up? I mean, what's your background? How was family? Do you come from a religious family? How did you get on this particular path of we call the Sahaba Initiative, and how do you characterize your current occupation, among other things? Of course, there's a lot of questions in one, but
yeah, it's interesting. The question about who are you or who am I is it's one of those deep questions that you constantly are asking in life, trying to figure out, your lineage, your background, and all those different things. I guess in summation, just real briefly, my mom came to the U.S. Probably around middle school, settled in California with her family, with my grandparents, and she went to high school here. My dad came here shortly after college. Both of them came from India, different parts. My dad grew up in Mumbai, Bombay, whatever people call it, and then my mom is from Bangalore. But what's more interesting is studying what was happening at that time, maybe like 50 years ago. My dad's family is from a place called Hyderabad. I'm sure some people have heard of it, but it was ruled by a king. It was like the remnants of the Mughal empires. After the Mughal Empire, I think the 1700s started to dissipate. A new Muslim empire leader came together and they ruled over that place. And they held the title Nizam. So that's sort of where my last name comes from. It's we have this allegiance to the Nizam. 60 years ago, Mir Ali Usman Khan, the head of the state, that he was the richest man in the world. He beat everybody else out. He had a lot of income through diamonds and other things. But alongside that, he built one of the most modern cities of the century. And then eventually what ended up happening was there was a battle between, because he did not choose to become part of India or Pakistan. it was more of a multi-ethnic space. And then he ended up having to fight it out with India, and then it eventually became a part of India. So that's from my dad's side, that's the roots. From my mom's side, still trying to understand more of this stuff. From what I've heard, they have some Arab, Turkish, Persian roots. They came into that city there, set up coffee plantations, and they've been selling coffee from there for a long time. But for the most part, most of my family has either come to the United States or moved to Saudi Arabia. A lot of my dad's side of the family have been in Saudi Arabia for 2 or 3 generations. And I would say, pretty much the entire family is very religious. I would say not religious in the same sense that perhaps it's categorized in the United States where you have to be like part of some, I don't know, maybe in other parts of the world it's the same way, but some people, there's religious identifying markers. I would say they're more focused on what matters, which is like, praying 5 times a day, the akhlaq and those type of things, which is something I'm grateful for, because the last thing you want is like to be attached to the symbolism and not the actual meaning of what
right. Right. So like growing up at home, I mean, did you have any background studying Islam, Quran, things like that?
Yeah. So I was born in Southern California. My initial school, I went to Orange Crescent, which was run by Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui at that time. He was kind of fresh and new to California. In his first 2 years, he established a school. My preschool teacher was his wife, so there's a lot of meaning there. A lot of great people came out of that school. Went through elementary school there, and then at some point, my dad decided we should go to Saudi Arabia. So we moved to Saudi for all of middle school. And when I was in Saudi, there was a lot of exposure to Islamic scholarship in many different ways. I mean, just being there, the main reason we did move there was because of building the foundation in Islam. So, regularly going to Mecca, Medina was like a big part of it. But then also exposure to scholarship. I mean, I think one of the things that we were blessed with was being on the Eastern Province. There was a few major cities, Al-Ahsa, Hufuf, and there's a lot of major scholars there. So, my dad was very keen on introducing us to the variety of Islamic scholarship that was available, introducing us to the local shuyukh there. We had many great thinkers that were just settled there in that area. And I would say they were very broad in the understanding. Some of them, they knew American culture. They had the idea of the American system pretty well, and they knew Western values, and at the same time, they had a very deep understanding of Islam. One of the prominent people that I remember that was bringing scholars together at that time when I was younger was Sheikh Abdullah Qadi. I'm sure
right, exactly.
He was there on the East Coast, so he was sort of he attracted a lot of people. But throughout my time there, we got exposed to a lot of what Islam is in practice, and I think that really stood out to me when I came back.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, so I recall during my visit, that the one thing, of course, that stood out was how young you were. I think around the time that we first met, I think you're probably about 20. You're 20 years old, and I was really impressed, right? Allah bless you. I mean, and protect you. Impressed at the fact that you are so passionate about the work that you do, and you're working right in the hood, right? So that's a lot of people don't know. It's like you were there in the hood with with the brothers, right?
Yeah.
And try to do all this work, and also the brothers that work with you and the sisters as well, right? So, so right now, so you're the president of the Sahaba Initiative. Could you speak just a little bit about what the Sahaba Initiative is, what it does, among other things?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, I would say Sahaba Initiative at its core is really about community transformation. I mean, what I see Sahaba Initiative, our big vision is to go into the places where it's bleak, difficult, all across our region, and bring our institution there, build Islam there, transform the community. I mean, that is the core of our work, and it happens in different ways. It happens through mental health services, through zakat, financial assistance. It's through building community, classes, it's all those different elements. But at the core is really that community transformation. It's helping people break the cycles of poverty, but more importantly, it's helping people build community and family and hold, it's really holding life together. Because so many people, I thought about this over the years. It's like, can we undo poverty? At some level, you could bring a bunch of money and give it to people and have enough resources. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that need to be done in the process, which is helping people overcome their own challenges in life, the traumas and different things. But alongside that, it's also helping them get closer to God, helping them build a spiritual life, build community, build friendships, right? It's like, people need more than just resources to build a life. If they don't have the meaning to want to do anything, and all the money in the world will not solve those problems. So I think we're addressing those societal challenges at multiple levels. So alhamdulillah, this is our 15th year being in existence. We started off with a shoestring budget of $2,000, and alhamdulillah, we're getting close to a little around 2 million now. So it's grown. We have a massive team now, and it's the impact is crazy. Last year we gave out 1 million pounds of food. So just taking on its own light.
Right. And most of your work is in the United States, or is outside as well?
It's all local. So we focus on our area of Inland Empire, which is San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and that's the core. We want to create that change within our local community. We don't even branch out to Orange County because we're just like, we got to focus on what we can actually tangibly be around and get involved in, right? Because there's so much work that needs to be done just locally.
Right. MashaAllah. Yeah. Allah bless you. Yeah. It's, I really like what you said, of course, about like how the materialist approach is, well, you didn't use that term, but, I'm using it, materialist approach itself, of course, is not a guaranteed sort of way of success, right? To help people to overcome poverty, right? Because actually you have these two major competitors, right, for that, capitalism and Marxism or socialism, right? But both of them are sort of materialist philosophies, right? In the sense that, they suggest, or at least it would express that, that happiness itself is to be found in how much material you have, how many objects you own, right? And so there's this constant debates and comparisons that people make about, like, okay, what everyone else has, right? These, there's talk about the wealth disparity, talk about issues of like of job, so the gender pay gap, supposed gender pay gap and things like that, quite often, right? So it sort of sounds like to me that, and again, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, so it sounds like to me like that you don't believe that reparations, for instance, would be like necessarily something that would help solve the problems that a lot of Black people have.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, very loaded question. I'll say what's very interesting here is I have two friends in the assembly. One of them is Corey Jackson, and the other is Bill Asaili. Bill Asaili is a Republican Muslim Lebanese guy, and Corey is on the left, Democrat. And you can go on the internet and find them constantly attacking each other and beefing about reparations. And the way, and this is kind of, Bill being sneaky, he put a thing out there saying that we're going to fund a study, a very in-depth study on reparations. And it was just like to kind of like say, screw you guys, I'm just gonna make this more difficult, but I'm gonna give you a bunch of money.
Right. Yeah. To study it.
To study it. So, yeah, I mean, I think, if there was an approach that made sense for people to be able to disseminate the funds and create a sense of equality, I think that would be great. But I think what I know about the United States is that everything is for profit, and that is part of our system. And one of the biggest challenges is that even if something is socially good and that and it benefits society, there's a way that corporations will come in and they'll take advantage of that situation.
Yep. climate change is one example of that. Yeah, climate change, or so carbon
yeah,
footprint,
climate
things like
change is
that.
a big
Right?
one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
came
yeah.
and took their money
Hmm.
from it.
Hmm.
And you'll see this across the board.
Hmm.
Kevin O'Leary has this, from Shark
Hmm.
Tank. He has this statement about AOC. He said that AOC, and AOC is great. I've met her a few times. She's a
Hmm.
great thinker, and she's smart and organized. But
Hmm.
Kevin O'Leary said that she's the best socialist that's also a capitalist in one sense,
Hmm.
because she's created an entire industry around her brand,
Hmm.
from the commodification of selling T-shirts to her ideas, her clothing, all the different things that make her
Yeah.
make her who she is. To
Hmm.
some extent, there's like this constant negotiation that, like, okay, we believe in socialist ideals, but the only way to make it happen is through capitalism,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
And,
I had this exact conversation with someone on my Facebook page about a week ago, right?
yeah.
And I made the exact same point. I said, yeah, we do have socialist aspects of our economy,
Mhm.
but those socialist sort of aspects of the economy and everything exist only because of capitalism, right? Where the opposite is not true, right? You need capitalism in order to sort of make things free, quote unquote, right? So
Well, yeah, that's
yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah, yeah,
interesting thing. I had
yeah,
this discussion
yeah,
yesterday about
yeah.
Mamdani. So
Hmm.
Mamdani,
Hmm.
his dad is, obviously one of the more prominent thinkers after 9/11,
Hmm.
uh, very outspoken. But then I hear from other people, he was also expelled from Uganda by
Hmm.
Idi Amin. And I
Hmm.
remember talking to some folks, and some
Hmm.
people were like also saying that, no, well, his dad was a beneficiary uh, of what the Uganda people, African people in Uganda lost. Uh,
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
the
Well,
hierarchy
his
that was
mom
kind of
too. His
shifted.
mother was a big film producer. She made the movie Mississippi Masala, right? So like they're filthy rich. I mean, the people. I mean, they benefited from capitalism, and then now it's like, okay, well, capitalism is easy. So after they got what they want out of capitalism, now they're telling people, okay, we need socialism, right? But it's not going to come out of their own pockets, right? But anyway, go ahead, finish your
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
interesting thing, right? So
yeah,
it's a really hard.
yeah.
It's when you
Mm-hmm.
start poking holes at the whole thing, it becomes very difficult to get
Mm-hmm.
to. I mean, I do think that between him
Mm-hmm.
and his dad, they both are extremely smart, and his mom. They're all smart. They're very
Yes, right.
outspoken on Palestine,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for me that's the biggest thing. As far as the policies and everything go, I mean that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different discussion. But
Mm-hmm.
from what I think is going to happen, it's like you're also in a negotiating battle, right? Like you see, sometimes Trump will put something out there and like something crazy, and then you have to come to the negotiating table. If
Mm-hmm.
he becomes mayor and
Mm-hmm.
he's putting some stuff out there
Mm-hmm.
that are getting people shaken up a little bit, some people are going to come to the negotiating table, and you're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
come to meet at some middle point and
Mm-hmm.
come to discussion of what actually can be done for the city, right? Some people are
Mm-hmm.
like, we're going to pack up our money and go to a different state. That is
Mm-hmm.
going to happen, but New York is still a major city, so uh,
Yeah, right,
it, it's
right.
all an experiment. You don't know what's going to come
Yeah,
out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the things, of course, that he's promising, he's not going to be able to sort of like, he's not going to be able to actually realize many of the promises that he makes. But on a campaign, it sounds good. Give people
Mhm.
free stuff is really a brilliant strategy. Promise
Mhm.
people a lot of free things, even if you really can't deliver. And so yeah, I agree that he probably, if he were to win, right, which I actually don't think he would, but Allah knows best. We'll find out. But like if we were to win, I'm quite sure that he's going to have to negotiate, with, the other powerful members of the city and say, okay, well, we have a little bit of this, but none of that is happening, right? So, yeah, yeah,
It's
mm,
almost as if
yeah,
right now politics has
mm-hmm,
become a
mm-hmm,
gigantic exercise in brand and marketing on all sides.
mm-hmm,
Between the blue dog Democrats to the
mm-hmm,
leftists to the people on the right. It's
mm-hmm,
almost like it's hard to even actually figure out what's going on because there's just so much noise,
mm-hmm,
and people are trying to get their voice out when it comes to the marketing.
mm-hmm.
But almost never do people actually stop and study the policies and try to figure out how's this policy going to work and actually dig deep into that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, most people, right, exactly. Yeah, it's most of people.
But it's the
Yeah.
feeling, right? There's actually some studies on this that
Mm-hmm,
the feeling that you have your person in there is overrides everything else that
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that you think and believe
mm-hmm.
because it's your guy. right?
Yeah, yeah. Right. Well, I really do appreciate the fact that you that you work with everyone, right? You
Hmm.
know, and you're not sort of ideological in the way that a lot of Muslims are when
Hmm.
it comes to this. And you know, and I think you really can't afford to be that with, especially with what you're doing. You're just trying to do good things for people. But I was wondering, like, you know, do you have your own political aspirations? Because I can see myself voting for someone like you.
No, no, I literally didn't touch politics
Yeah.
until last
Mm,
year because
mm,
I know all of our elected officials in
mm,
Congress and everyone else
mm,
in our region.
mm,
And I had a meeting with Pete Aguilar. Pete Aguilar is the top three Democrat. Uh,
mhm,
it's Hakeem Jeffries,
mhm,
for the other person, and it's Pete. And
mm,
you know, after that meeting with Pete, it changed changed my opinion on a lot of things in politics. But
mhm,
we sat down with him. He collected, I would say, millions of dollars from the Muslim community,
mm,
like literally millions. His entire first half of his career was funded by Muslims, Palestinians.
mhm,
Uh, his position in mayor and continued on to Congress. It was all Muslim money.
mhm,
Um, and then at some point, APAC came in and wrote a check and said,
mm.
"Look, we're going to climb you to the top."
Right. Mhm,
And
mhm.
he changed the way he spoke, the way
Yeah,
he
yeah.
acted,
Mhm,
everything.
mhm,
And when we were meeting with him, it was like he didn't know all these people that he was been with for a long time, all the people that
mhm,
raised money for him, and he
mhm,
essentially came out and said,
mhm,
you know, uh, he kept playing with words. Essentially, he's like, "Look, I'll come to your mosque and talk to you guys." I'm like, "Dude, that's not the point here. The point here is that we want you to be very explicit on where you stand on this foreign policy issue." And
mhm,
uh, he just kept dodging it, and he
mhm,
tried to call others that he
mhm,
knew in the Muslim community and try to like play a little bit of divide and conquer and other things.
mhm,
And at that moment, I realized that we don't need as many Muslims in politics as far as like being elected to office, but we need a
mhm,
strong lobbying arm, and we know
mhm.
how to pull
Yeah.
the levers on people. Whether it's uh, finances or the media power or whatever else, you can do a lot just from behind the scenes without actually even running a candidate. I mean, you don't have very many APAC facing candidates in the sense that they're just like uh, from that persuasion or that background or whatever else. APAC funds everybody and they control everybody from the
Yes.
background.
Right. Right.
So
Mhm,
there's a lot more
mhm.
power in the lobbying, the actual candidacy.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. I agree. I agree with that. Yeah. Totally. And yeah. I mean, so it's the Sahaba Initiative, and I hear that. Of course, you're doing a lot of feeding. Right? Is there sort of an education wing, right, of your activities? Like, for instance, okay, you're feeding people, but okay, what about are you teaching people how to feed themselves, right? What sort of activities would you say that you're involved in for those type of issues?
Yeah, so we have different, multiple layers of our programs. We have different programs and program heads. So one of them is called Project Climb. Project Climb, the whole goal is to help people, small cohort at a time, help them understand the job market, build the right skills, and then find permanent employability. So it
Hmm.
starts off by, for example, helping them get a low paying job, just entry level job,
Hmm.
and get them stable with one job, and then
Hmm.
helping them through this process of going to school and getting the next job, for example,
Hmm.
and getting
Hmm.
them permanent support. So, because we've been giving out, I would say, uh, close to around 400,000 a year or something like that, just in zakat distribution every
Hmm.
year, and we give a lot in counseling and other things, and we realize that we really need people to spend time with individuals to get
Hmm.
them where they need to go. It's not enough to write a check. You need human interaction. So we expanded our team this year to launch Project Climb and have a program director work with individual families at a time, a
Hmm.
small amount of families every quarter, helping them uh, get the support they need, and then going to the next family and helping them. So it's really that human interaction. A lot of people just you can give them a list of things to do, or you
Hmm.
can help them walk through the process, and that's like the most powerful aspect of it.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I really I worry about quite often, especially in the current culture, is um that people who are impoverished, for example, right? Legitimately impoverished and for whatever reasons, because maybe some errors they make, maybe they had they had some bad luck in life. that they're sort of led to focus on them seeing themselves as victims, right? It's just that, listen, I'm a victim, the system did it to me, and there's not really a whole bunch I could do about that. And I think that this kind of comes up in conversations about race in particular. Like historically, the Europeans who actually created what some call scientific racism, that they reduced like people's conditions to their color, right? It's like, okay, well, you are in this condition because of your color. You're backwards because of your color, right? You're black or you're brown and things like that. But then at a certain time in history, there was a shift. Same people who are arguing for biological determinism, they shifted around, started talking about environmental sort of effects on people's lives. So it's like it's environment, is all environment, right? And my challenge quite often to environment is always to say, okay, well, if environment itself was as deterministic as biology supposedly was, then you would see in a single family people all achieving or people all failing, right? Because I have siblings, right? And we didn't all take the same path, but we all grew up in the same environment, right? So that in itself just undermines the idea that environment itself has this sort of compulsive effect necessarily on people. That environment, of course, may press you to make certain types of choices in your life, right? But people still have choice, right? And yeah. So yeah, I just think that that's an important part of that education. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you made. I had a mentor who passed away, Dr. Abdullah Mohammed. He was one of the first African American psychologists in probably the country, California as a whole. And he told me once that he did a study with the Rand Corporation, and the Rand Corporation hired him to do a research study on formerly incarcerated people. And the ultimate study was like, the outcome of the study was like, we should just jail them. We shouldn't do anything else, because all the data shows they're going to be go back into doing some crime, and that's it. So that was the outcome of the study, and they were trying to make that case. And if you go that route of just doing a scientific study to make your point, and then just just manage the situation, you can create those circumstances. But the reality is, cultural influences, people's change, words are powerful on people. Hearing a message is powerful.
Yes.
I mean, the power of Islam and seeing Muslims is enough to transform communities. So there's just a lot of other variables here that are hard to quantify, and people try very hard to quantify through policy and studies. But the reality is, the idea of Muslims going to these spaces, creating institutions, and creating this change, it's very hard to predict, measure, and understand how things are going to be actually done, right? Because it's just a phenomenon, right? Islam is really
right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, and you can't really sort of like. I mean, it's in some ways you can predict human behavior, but in other ways you can't. We're not as predictable as people, think we are quite often, right? So, I mean, people can be programmed, right? They're very effective. People who actually empower are very, very effective at programming people so that they can control them in certain ways, right? Yeah. But like sometimes people break through.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So my whole day job, everything else I do is predictive analytics. It's how you can predict human behavior and understand humans. But the reality is, things come out of nowhere and completely throw off the entire prediction.
Right, exactly, right, yeah. So alhamdulillah, yeah. So of course you're working with Muslims, of course, in who part of your team, and you're working with a lot of non-Muslims as well, right? What would you say? I mean, in your work, I'm quite sure you have challenges, but overall, I'm quite sure you're observing the ummah, right, both nationally then internationally. What would you say you perceive to be like the greatest challenges that Muslims have today?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard different things over the years from different scholars. I've heard one scholar recently highlight that the biggest challenge is nationalism and the abandoning of the Quran. I've heard others say that child abuse is a major problem and the lack of child education in the Muslim world. I think many of these things are big challenges, but I would say if it was purely one thing we should be doing as an ummah is getting organized and improving our Hassan and things. Because I just think that as a whole, institutions are power, and we have been in the United States for a long time. The way that we run our institutions is directly proportionate to the way that we also build power as a community. And, I think if we don't do that right, we're doing our community a big disservice, because the Ummah is full of broken institutions. There's thousands of Muslim universities that are run poorly all across the world, from India to Pakistan to Africa. The remnants of the past, the masajid. They're just there, but no one has done the actual work to build our institution at the same level other institutions are running in the country. You compare us to the average McDonald's, right? And look at the Muslim institutions. The McDonald's runs more efficiently, is more organized, cares about worker rights, does contracts right. In the United States, most of our masajid, we don't do our contracts right with our employees as a whole, imams and others. We don't do that right. We don't give feedback the right way. We make unreasonable demands of people. We just do all of these things that, just contribute to the failing of us as an ummah, because these institutions all have power and a reflection of what our state is. So I think for me, actually, this is where my doctoral dissertation really focused on this concept. I looked at all of the administrative elements of the ummah over the years, from the Ottoman Empire to the Mughal Empire to China, to all these different countries and rulers that we had. We always had the imam, the scholars, the caliphs, for example, and then at the same time we had the vizier, we had the administrative realm, we had a lot of things that were built from an administrative practice to do things the right way. I think the Ottomans as a whole were just brilliant. You look at the science, you look at the way that America has built its power, and so much of it came from Ottomans. How they actually managed or led an empire for 900 years. It came through administrative practices, and now we're seeing many people that have abandoned the Ottoman Empire and try to pick up those same administrative practices, the professionalism, and all those other things, and that's not happening at the same level, I would say.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that Muslims are so disorganized?
Why are they disorganized? I mean, I think it's also regional. I think certain countries, certain backgrounds have been used to this. Malaysia is very organized. Indonesia is very organized. I'll say Turkey is pretty good. But then certain regions are not. I mean, there's always an outside element, but I think we can't limit it to the outside element in our countries, right? I went to school predominantly 90% Arabic, people from Arab background, including the teachers. And the school was run horribly, from the top down, from the principal all the way to every classroom, right? At one level, you could blame the government and the institution of that country, but then at the same time, you have to blame the people that are running these institutions, right? So you have to do both. So when I look at every Muslim institution and government, they work simultaneously in the United States, across the world. As far as why, I think we abandoned that practice of the administrative aspect, and we've also were very reliant on the Ottoman Empire and other empires. Once the Ottomans were out of the picture, we didn't have the same infrastructure. We actually didn't know what to do. So, we were just picking up the pieces and trying to figure things out from complete scratch.
Yeah. Well, I have another why for you then. All right. So I asked you about why do you think, in other words, in terms of causation, but okay, here's another why. Why should Muslims be organized, right? In other words, and I'm speaking of in teleological terms, right? What's the telos, right? Of this all. I mean, why should we be organized? How does it impact us, others, things like that?
I mean, as a whole, we are a massive amount of the population in the world. I mean, the Muslims, it's like 1 in 3 people are Muslim now. right? The people that have outshined us, outdone us across the board are not bigger in numbers, but they are out organizing us at all levels, whether that's the corporate power, the political power, everything else. It's just their ability to pull together resources, focus on what they want to happen, and get those things done. That's what it comes down to. We as a community can't do that at a very basic level a lot of times, right? We're getting it done better now than ever before, but still, we got 50 something Muslim countries and they can't coordinate together on very key issues of the Ummah. So I think, you look at the United States, Europe, and a couple other countries, they are able to run the world through this strategic planning, long-term vision, and getting really organized as leaders of the world in what sense?
Right. Well, so, but do you think that that the organization would be effective because we have a duty to bring God's light to the world, right? I mean, because I would think that that would be the primary reason why being organized would be very effective, right? Because I think that our strength as Muslims, that we provide to the world is ethical guidance, right? And also, exemplary behavior, right? That people can emulate, right? To show them that, okay, well, these things are possible, that you can actually transform yourself, right? And so it's like when we talk about the prison, I often say that an individual who actually goes to prison, becomes Muslim, and then reforms himself is the greatest proof of the truth of Islam, because you're talking about people who come from the very bottom of society, right? Guy probably never even read a book in his life, probably maybe even was illiterate. I know people like that. One brother I know, he only got a third grade education. He becomes Muslim. He starts to read. He can read. He reads all types of books now, right? But it's like, so I would think that that would be ultimately the benefit of it, as opposed to just simply, okay, we're trying to compete with the West, and trying to be just as organized or more organized than them, right?
Well,
So,
I think that's the point that you mentioned. That is the point. That is the point of our existence. It's to
yes,
ultimately
right.
do this because we're trying to bring ihsan to the world. We're trying to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this work, right? That should be the ultimate motivating factor. Which this topic is exactly parallel to my dissertation, is looking at what motivates people. How can we make spirituality the motivating factor to get organized as a community, and looking at all these different institutions over the years. My biggest challenge is that not everybody is driven by the ihsan. That should be the ultimate goal.
Right, yeah.
I would say the majority of people and empires, Muslim empires over time, Islam was like a factor they utilized to their benefit. They took the conquerors, the people that are the caliphs or whatever, they used it to their benefit. And but the amazing thing is that the exceptions to the rule, people like Umar Abdul Aziz, those people really set the example for everybody for generations, right? There's other names we don't hear because it's hard to find in their story their personal reform and their personal convictions and their personal connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they just become other names in history. But the ihsan of people like Umar Abdul Aziz, it stands out for generations. People can go back and read his story and realize that this person put an immense amount of pressure on himself, that he never could sleep a night without feeling the burden of the power that he did have, right? And that is the example. That's the personal reform that we should have. If you're in a leadership position, you should never feel comfortable, right? When you're signing up for leadership, you're really signing up for personal scrutiny.
Yes, right.
Which, is a challenge. To the point you made about people coming out of prison, I have witnessed from the people that have worked with me and people that have volunteered, people that have come out of prison, and that have worked on themselves, they are the most organized, they're most on time, they're the most to actually commit to their word, and they are just, there's a lot of behavioral elements I've seen from them that I haven't seen from people that haven't been to prison from the Muslim community, right? It's because they've actually made that commitment to work on themselves, in ensuring that their word and intention and deeds all align, and that they are working in being organized, because if they're not organized, it takes away. On a side note, I'll tell you a funny story. A couple of months ago, about a year ago, I was with Omar Hakim. I think you remember Omar Hakim from LA.
Yeah.
We went to an entrepreneurial event in right by UCLA. Very few people showed up, so we're sitting there like, hey, well, we got to find another one to go to. And we look up on our phone and we see that the Scientology church is having an entrepreneurial meetup. And I'm like, sure, let's go ahead and let's do it. Let's go attend. We should have just made the connection. I should have just made the connection. There was a recruiting event. So you go to the event, you sit down, they make you watch a bunch of videos about L. Ron Hubbard, blah, blah, blah. They put you in a dark room, and then they take you to a series of like different activities. And then they give you these books. And they tell you to sign up for one of these courses. I was like, I'm not paying for one of these courses, whatever. But I looked at the material. The material was great. And one of the things the Scientology Church has been really good at is helping train the Nation of Islam and many others on how to get people off of drugs and off the streets and getting their life reformed. If you look at the Scientology courses, 100% of the first courses that you take are all about getting organized, setting goals, managing your time, figuring out what you're going to do this week. Everything is about getting organized. And once you get past that level, you get higher up the hierarchy. But everything is about getting your life together to that extent where you actually can manage yourself.
Yeah. The reason, again, I just want to harp on this issue is because I feel that, like, especially in politics, that Muslims in politics are just not as focused on the sort of power and the role that Islam plays in actually improving society, making people more virtuous, and helping to contribute to a more virtuous society. And we have the tendency to kind of like to embrace whatever the political platform, sort of gave us to, I guess you would say, to promote and advocate for, right? As opposed to Muslims like feeling, I guess, comfortable about saying, yeah, well, Islam is a power of good. It actually is a force of good, right, in society, right? I'm not, because when they ask, okay, well, Muslims want to convert people, I say, well, yeah, it's like, sure, I mean, but it has to be your choice, right? We just, give it a chance, let's talk about it and everything. I mean, that in itself is not going to undermine the Constitution or undermine, of course, American society, or make it worse than what it already is, for example, right? And I just think we need to get back to that. And in my opinion, too, even when it comes to leadership, like the word leader is much broader than just the imam or the scholar, right? So to me, my position is that any influencer is in a position of leadership, like even if you're online influencer, that if you're a Muslim, right, and you're a practicing Muslim, then you're in a position of leadership. And you have a heavy burden on you, right? To actually, to not necessarily to say, okay, that you're going to be we're going to represent yourself as like an authority on Islam, right? But you are to exemplify Islam, at least have some confidence about, okay, well, Islam is a force of good, and Islam can bring a lot of good things to society, and I'm unapologetic about that, right? So. And even in the face of people attacking Muslims, talking about taqiyya and all these other things, well, really, okay, whatever, you can say whatever you want, that, yeah, I'm not embarrassed to be a Muslim. I'm not embarrassed about the Quran. I'm not embarrassed about my Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. I believe that Islam is God's religion, and it's the truth that God wants you to accept, right? But if you don't want to talk about it, no problem. I won't pester you. But I just want to let you know that you're not going to make me feel embarrassed and feel uneasy about my religion.
Yeah, I think as a whole, I've met a lot of the Muslims in politics. I wouldn't say their personal ethics are very, very much that impressive. I would say that the majority of them, there is a level of wanting to be in a position of power, loving the authority, things like that. That's what I've seen. At a personal ethical level, you constantly see many lines blurred. You just see that, okay, this is not the route. The challenge is that most good people just don't go into politics in that same way, and then you end up with a lot of people that don't have the same principles. And I think you have to force it. I mean, just imagine we had a Muslim lobbying arm like AIPAC or whatever else that enforced that the candidates are actually upright, have upright ethical character, right? You'll see this. You'll see this on the Christian side too. You'll see that people, if they're Christian organizations are coming together to fund a candidate or whatever, they do ask about the personal ethics. They do ensure that the person is up to a certain par, and it really also motivates that person to stay true to their own values rather than succumbing to whoever's the highest bidder. So I think this is a new space for the Muslim community. I think we all have to plan strategically on what our biggest goals are when it comes to Muslims in politics, right? Preservation of faith is very important. Realizing that you do want to clearly communicate Islam, that's very important. And to use the levers to be able to promote that is a whole arena to dabble into.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think like people are a bit unfair when they expect from someone like Mamdani to represent Islam when actually his core base of support did not come from the Muslims. It came from a lot of white liberals, for example, right? I think he's a very likable person, in terms of like, he's very articulate. I think he's much more articulate even than Obama, for instance. He has a lot of potential, right? But I couldn't support him because of his views, and he seemed to, not be very serious about like his faith. Right. And, so when Muslims come out and they cheer him on simply because he took a very, strong position with respect to Israel, and then critical of Muslims who actually say, "Oh, this is not something to celebrate." You say, "Okay, I should support him just because he's Muslim." And he said that. And it's been very troubling for me to see like Muslims treating like Free Palestine as like a new Shahadatain, right? It's almost like, okay, well, you can overlook everything else. If the person said Free Palestine, then nothing else really matters, right? And then I think that in itself is a very extreme distortion of our teachings. And of course, yes, we want Free Palestine, but at the same time, that should not be a basis for us to say that, we need to ignore everything else, right? And I think that's one of the main reasons why we failed in politics in the West up to this point.
So to that point, I agree. I mean, I do like Mamdani on a couple of different levels. I mean, one, just being smart is very important for me. Like, he's just extremely smart. His dad's like a brilliant guy. So there's a level of just intelligence that he brings to the table, which I don't see in politics. But just to the point about Free Palestine as a lever in politics, I do think that is a problem, because I do see many people using that to their advantage to fundraise for themselves, do a lot of things. And it's out of the goodwill. I mean, many people have, and including charities, many charities have raised a lot of money for Gaza, for aid, and have never delivered the aid. Millions of dollars are just sitting there in the bank. So you do have many people that have exploited the Palestinian cause for their own benefit. I'll also say it's a historical problem throughout the century, because you had many dictators to an extent, right? You had people like Idi Amin, Saddam Hussein, many other people that were very outspoken people, Gaddafi. They're all very much outspoken on Palestine, and it literally meant nothing. They were using that as a rallying cry to build their own power base, and then they did not stand on the issue, which is incredibly important for us to actually keep our eyes on the prize, watch the movements, watch and see what things are actually coming out of politicians are even saying these things, because it could just be that they're appeasing a crowd and then going back in to doing whatever they're doing, right? Celebrities, you see that in celebrities too. Many celebrities have said Free Palestine, and at the end of the day, they're going back to doing what they were doing and making the same deals. So I think we got to be vigilant and pay attention, because the last thing we want to do is get caught in just the emotion of the moment and not build long term, because that's how you lose in politics. It's like you're constantly getting caught up and feeling emotionally high and then jumping to the next thing. Some of this you could also see in the Arab Spring. Some people were celebrating early on, and then not seeing what moves were actually being made. Was the military in power? Was the military not in power? And but at the end of the day, they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, no, very, very good points. Very profound, right? Yeah, I really do agree with that. I mean, and even businesses, corporations did the same thing too. They take advantage, like BLM, when that everything's going on, the transgender thing, everybody, we support the rainbow, so yeah, it's people are, easily duped. Most people seem to, unfortunately, been easily duped by those things. So I'm gonna shift a little bit. I have a couple more questions for you. So, I mean, who would you say inspired you to do what you do now, right? I mean, is there someone, recent history, someone from a recent, from the distant past, one or more people perhaps even, that who you think deserves some credit for your life, who deserves to be given a bit more attention by other people, who you feel really indebted to?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound a little cliche. I mean, Malcolm X is very important, but I will say the thing that attracted Malcolm X, perhaps not what most people have. I mean, you could read Malcolm X from different perspectives, and perhaps one of the ways we read him from is very particular political lens to really see how he spoke truth to power. That's one lens, but you look at the other comments that Malcolm X made about and all the things that he was doing at the time. It was very interesting, right? To be able to travel throughout the Muslim world, meet heads of state, meet Muslim leaders. He met everyone from Jamal Abdel Nasser to King Faisal. He was doing a lot of things to really understand the situation at a high level and what was actually going on. One of the comments that he made was that one of the things that Muslims are losing out on is just public relations, PR. The idea of just having that element, because we're constantly getting sucked into one thing or the other. So public relations really helps calm some of those tensions that we have in the Muslim community, because it becomes more relationship based. So that was actually one of the reasons I got my undergrad in PR. But then, you look at some of the other things you talk about, institutional building. People forget that Malcolm X, whether it was as just a spiritual head or an actual administrative head, he was overseeing one of the largest institutions in the United States at the time. I think, don't quote me, but I think the revenue of the Nation of Islam at the time was around $100 million. So it was a massive operation. There were laundromats, there were small businesses, there were fish businesses, there were mosques that were being built. It was a massive project. And they missed out on that component. It's like, man, he was also leading a strong institution that was also structured and organized a certain way where if someone was to come in, they get all the elements to build the life skills, build the public speaking skills, the relationship skills, all those things that you need to actually build yourself up. So they were teaching a lot of people from things from scratch. So I think those two elements of seeing the broader perspective, engaging world leaders, understanding things at a deeper level, and then also the institutional component really came from Malcolm X. Throughout the years, contemporary leaders, I would say, in California, Southern California particularly, Dr. Muzamil Siddiqui has been like a gem. I served on the Shura Council board with him, and just the lens, the broadness of his understanding and the broadness of the historical context, as someone who studied in Harvard, Birmingham, Medina, Darul Nedwa, has engaged from scholars from Sheikh bin Baz to Uthaymeen to Sheikh Qardawi to all the different leaders, and then coming back here and contextualizing all this knowledge is very important, but then also his personal ikhlaq. The reason Dr. Siddiqui has been able to withstand his contemporaries and do a lot of the work that he's been able to do is purely based off his ikhlaq, his ability to be someone that's patient with people, understanding of them, meeting them where they're at, and growing with the community. I think it just goes to show that one person for the last 50 years has been able to outperform or outdo many others in Southern California because of his own patience, his own perseverance, facing the persecution of the community at times, the pushback, the challenges, and then growing. So I think that just shows that one person can just do a lot.
MashaAllah, yeah, that's really great. MashaAllah, may Allah preserve him. And bless, of course, our brother Malcolm. And now, so I'm assuming like we can call you Dr. Arbazz now, right? Dr.
So
Arbazz.
people have dropped the AR. I've been going by Dr. Baz, but the funny thing is people
Dr.
think it's a whole
Baz,
different
okay.
person.
Right. Right. So I mean, and since you've completed both an MA and then your PhD, right, your dissertation, right, you know, so is your MA, is it published already? Is it available for people to read it?
Yeah. So I'm getting a second master's. My first master's was in actually how scholars can use social media to build a movement, and then my dissertation was really about how young Muslims can learn from the practices of the leaders of the past and build their own leadership skills. And then right now I'm finishing up a master's in data science, which I haven't got to the capstone yet, but I've been poking around this idea with people, and I get a lot of pushback. But the idea of using predictive analytics in really understanding aspects of making Islamic decisions, right? Whether it's like writing a fatwa or whatever else, what role does predictive analytics have when it comes to making these high-level decisions that have impact on people's lives?
Yeah, well, I really look forward to reading some of those things once they're available. If they are available, maybe you can send me something in the email. But yeah, especially the part about building a movement.
So I looked at some scholars, right? One of the greatest scholars I forgot to mention was Abul Kalam Azad. Abul Kalam Azad was the person right next to Gandhi, and many people don't realize that Gandhi was only able to do what he could do was through the Muslims. You know, Gandhi really negotiated with something called the Khilafat movement at the time. He needed Abul Kalam Azad to really engage Muslim scholars. But Abul Kalam Azad ended up becoming the head of education in India. He completely reformed education. The reason so many great minds come out of India is really because of him. But alongside that, he was a journalist. He was keen on using the media of his time to get out his message to the masses. And I think just really a great example of how you can build a movement through media.
MashaAllah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a great conversation. MashaAllah, I really enjoyed this conversation. And, I guess before we depart, perhaps you can sort of give people an idea of how they can follow your work.
Alhamdulillah. So, follow me on Instagram, Arbazz M. I'm part of a couple of different institutions. Sahaba Initiative is one of them. A newer institution that I've been working on is called Muslim Visionaries, which is really about building leadership skills and really training people to bring the resources together. One of the things I've been really focused on is getting more Muslims to share their resources, start their own businesses, get involved politically through collaboration. So I think that's something that I've been really heavily involved in the last couple of years. And then other than that, you find me at the Qamaria in Southern California.
Yeah, well, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Well, inshallah, with that's really, I guess kind of, we could say that's a wrap. That's really, 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 like I said, really enjoyed this conversation. So there you have it. There are future Dr. Arbazz Mohammed Nizami. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And, looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully very soon. We'll talk, inshallah, later on. And
inshallah, let's get some Yemeni coffee when you're in town.
Yeah, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Subscribe to Lamppost Education Initiative on YouTube and Spotify.